products. Now we will see why products fail. First of all, context, the failure rate is high. 90% of the consumer goods fail in the first 3 years, 30% in the industrial products, and only 20% of service. Why industrial products and services fail less? Because they're co-produced with consumers. The first service sector, consumers are co-producing products or service together with a brand. And so one dimension of the service quality is produced by yourself. That is why these products are less sensible to failures. Industrial sectors, failure rates are lower because clients are quite early engaged into the research and development process.
Let's take the example of Airbus Industries. In the aeronautics industries, clients, that is the airlines, are very early involved into the research and development process, which means that they exactly give their opinion what they want in the future planes, and thus the failure rate is reduced. For example, the development of the A350 was co-realized together with the major carriers that were the clients of Airbus. For example, Emirates, Singapore Airlines, Air France, and who gave the opinion about how this plane should be realized and conceived in terms of engines, in terms of aerodynamics, in terms of equipment on board. So all these improvements and development of the airplane were co-realized together with the customer airlines. What are the factors causing failure? First of all, the shortening product life cycles. They were reduced by around 80% in 15 years. For example, in 2005, the life cycle for a PC or a mobile phone was 9 months and the associated research and development time 15 years. 10 years later, in 2015, the life cycles for PCs were only 6 months and the research of development time associated was 12 months. This brings me to the Moore's law, which states that the performance of an existing technology doubles every 24 months or 2 years with no increase in price. For example, computing power tends to approximately double every 2 years. That is, the number of transistors on a microchip doubles every 2 years, while the cost of the computers is halved. For example, a computer chip that contained 2,000 transistors and cost $1,000 in 2070, it costed $500 in 1972, $250 in 1974, $1 in 1990, and less than 2 cents to manufacture today. A personal computer that cost $3,000 in 1990 cost $1,500 in 1992, $750 in 1994, and would now cost around $5. So one can see that the cost dramatically decreased while the computing power dramatically increased. This is also what you can see here on the slide. So you can see that there's a linear increase of the number of transistors according to the year of introduction, which means a double of the computer power every 2 years due to a double of the computer chips, transistors on the computer chip. The contribution of the Moore's law can be seen in the development of IBM computers to PCs, to small smartphones and handy gadgets. You can see here a photo of a computer of 1975, then in the 90s, then in 2011 the first iPads, and a high quality, high performance laptop in 2020. To give you an example, even an iPhone 6 or today's USB stick is 32,000 times faster than the best Apollo era computers that sent man on the moon. And these computers, mini computers, could perform instructions 100 million times faster than the computers from the Apollo era and the Apollo rockets. Another example, in 1995, a typical computer had 100 megabytes hard disk drive and 8 megabyte RAM. For example, a PC from IBM cost more than $4,000. Today, a laptop with 1 terabyte hard disk drive, that is 1 million megabytes or 10,000 times more hard disk drive, and the 8 gigabyte RAM or 8,000 megabytes, so 1,000 times more RAM, cost $1,000. Another example, a 128 gigabyte card today or USB stick costs roughly $0.40 per gigabyte. A card with 128 megabyte capacity in 1995 cost around $234 per gigabyte. So 600 times more. So shortening the product life cycles associated to the Moore's law with more and more pressure to higher performance, associated to rising costs of developing products, is a major factor of failure. At the same time, global competition increases this pressure, as well as declining profitability of brand followers. In other words, when a brand arrives second or third, they don't have pioneer effects, they don't achieve learning effects, and do not achieve standard effects, and thus the profitability declines. This can be seen in the global smartphone markets. Whereas Apple was for a long time a leader, now Samsung, Huawei, Xiaomi take over more the position of Apple in terms of innovation capacity, in terms of launch of new product varieties, in terms of introduction of high innovative technologies such as artificial intelligence. And so through this global competition, the market shares and leadership position of Apple erodes progressively with the emergence of strong competition through Southeast Asia, first from Samsung and more now from Chinese competitors such as Huawei and Xiaomi. Furthermore, there's increasing environmental pressure due to political, institutional, and regulatory pressure. For example, regulatory pressure is mounting against tech companies across the EU and the US. This significantly dampens the company's ability to make money from extracting user big data and using it to target ads and to make money. Other examples concerns the artificial intelligence and autonomous cars, which are highly regulated markets to ensure security. Or the tobacco and drug market is also highly regulatory in terms of laws. Furthermore, consumer pressure for safe and eco-friendly green products. 80% of global respondents feel strongly that companies should help improve the environment, according to a study of the survey company Nielsen in 2019. Another study conducted by Marks & Spencer in 2019 reveals that 90% of the consumer expect environmental friendly products, but only 10% of consumers are ready to pay more. The respondents expect the industry to absorb the cost. This increases pressure and cost and harms innovation and their success. On the other hand, this opens opportunities for sustainable marketing and transformative consumer approaches through digitalization without product ownership or servitization. Examples are coming from the platform economy, such as Uber or GetAround. This shows that consumers not necessarily need their own products or the ownership associated, but can rent them, and this decreases the environmental pressure and gives new innovation opportunities in the digital world. Next, slow development. The speed to the market is crucial. According to McKinsey, the consulting company, a product launch 6 months behind the schedule will reduce lifetime profits by 30%. Where you're spending 10% over the R&D budget, trims profits by only 3%. Slow product development means high development costs due to longer development time, lower market share and lower scale economies because you're not the pioneer but the follower, and no standard graduation and no privileged client access. And then subsequently no network externalities and no learning effects. And then lower loyalty. Next factor is no standard creation or the war for the standards. The example comes from the video cassette recorder industry, where for years a format war happened between Philips, Sony and GVC. The first video cassette recorder VCR was launched in 1972 by Philips, but it had very bad image quality. Then in 1975, Sony launched Betamax with improved image quality, but only 1 hour recording. And the video recorder was very expensive. Therefore, Sony missed to create a standard, as very few consumers adopted the Betamax recorder. In 1976, GVC launched the VHS system with lower image quality, but higher record duration, and above all, at a lower price. At the same time, Sony attempt to dictate an industry standard backfired when GVC made the tactical decision to forego Sony's offer of Betamax in favor of developing its own VHS technology. The result was that consumers adopted at a large scale the VHS technology with a higher record duration, but above all at a lower price, even if the image quality was lower. Philips counterattacked with Video 2000 and Sony with high definition Betamax, but in 1983 GVC has created the standard and had 80% of market shares. Philips and Sony resigned on the video market. A similar later format war resulted from a failure to agree on a single standard for DVDs, high definition successor Toshiba HD DVD versus Sony Blu-ray in 2005. This format war ended in a victory for Sony's Blu-ray disc in 2008. The reasons are related to higher externalities through partnerships, as Blu-ray had much more partnerships with video studios, such as Century Fox, Gaumont, Disney, Apple and Columbia, versus only Paramount and Universal for HD-DVD. Furthermore, Sony decided to incorporate a Blu-ray disc player into its PlayStation and increased network effects. Furthermore, with a higher number of users, Blu-ray had also higher direct network effects, which increased the benefits for its system. Another factor is inadequate functional performance. You can take the example of the history of microcomputers or personal computers. The inventor of the micro or personal computer was MITS, which stands for Micro Instrumentation and Telemetry Systems. That introduced in 1974 a build-it-yourself personal computer called the Altair. However, it had no keyboard and no screen, and its output was just a bank of flashing lights. The users input the data by flipping toggle switches. The computer thus had inadequate functional performance and did not create standards. Only in 1976, Bill Gates and Allen started Microsoft, and subsequently Steve Jobs and Stephen Wozniak built a homemade computer that changed the world, the Apple I, as it was more sophisticated than the Altair. It had more memory, a cheaper microprocessor, and a monitor with a screen. In 1977, Apple introduced the Apple II, which had a keyboard and a color screen. Also, users could store the data on an external cassette tape. Apple soon swapped those tapes for floppy disks and subsequently to CDs. To make the Apple II as useful as possible, the company encouraged programmers to create applications for it, and thus created indirect externalities, increasing the benefits. The PC revolution had begun. Soon companies like Tandy, Commodore and IBM had entered the market in 1981, and computers became ubiquitous in offices and homes. So the inventor of the PC, MITS, failed because of inadequate functional performance.
Lack of differential advantage and limitation. That's why followers have less profitabilities, because there's generally only place for one. Followers who come too late are punished through the fact that customers don't want to buy imitations. Poor competitive positioning. This is above all the problem when you're doing brand extensions. When the brand extension does not correspond to initial positioning. A brand extension, I recall, means that products penetrate new categories. For example, big penetrated market of perfumes, but this brand territory is not compatible with a throwaway image, big has or low cost image. That's why this perfume failed, because it's not current to the initial position. Or Harley-Davidson launched a perfume is not complementary and current to the initial brand position, which has Harley-Davidson, not to the target group.
Indeed, the target group of Harley-Davidson are more the bikers with leather wear and less people who are using perfumes. Imagine the bikers driving on the Route 66 in the US after a day drive with a lot of sweat and dust using Harley-Davidson perfume. So it's more associated to a target group of rockers or bikers and less to a target group using perfumes.
This is another example why products fail. So a lot of brand extensions and extensions are actually failures because they don't respect the brand territory and the brand position. There are competition, there are hyper-segmentation, multiplication of SKU means stock keeping units. So that's our reference you can find in the supermarket. Inflation of models, which creates a lot of competition. For example, today you find more than 1,200 car models. So all brands confounded, all versions confounded, which creates intransparency of the market. Toothpaste market in 1960, there were only 14 toothpaste brands. Various in 2010, we have more than 100 toothpaste brands. To the media market, for example, journals in Germany, 143 television channels on the cable network, 302 radios, 400 regional newspapers, like in Toulouse, for example, Dépêche du Midi, and national newspapers, like, for example, Le Monde in France or Figaro. More than 400 newspapers, 1,300 magazines, and this without considering internet. And so clearly it becomes very hard to do advertising. It's very difficult to achieve customers. That is why this is much more efficient to do it through social media or email campaigns than to do classical advertising on traditional media channels. But to expensive prices, but this is again the question, if you don't offer enough mobile, an expensive price might be harmful, but if you have a differentiated product and brand, then higher prices might even be possible.
We can cite the example of the Laserdisc, which was a precursor to the DVD, offering consumers a higher quality picture and sound than VHS tapes. But unlike VHS players, Laserdisc players could not record TV. Laserdisc players as well as Laserdisc themselves were also very expensive. So the value was outperformed by the price. Introduced in the 70s, Laserdisc failed to gain